Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, it is my unique privilege to have a very accomplished entrepreneur, a fellow IPR, and an author, Hema Hattangadi from Bangalore, on our show. Hema, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Great to be here.
Thank you. Hema is the co-founder of Conserve, and we'll talk a lot about Conserve. And she's an author, and anyone who's an author is particularly close to me. She's written a book which is titled Lift Off: Transforming Conserve. So Hema, tell me, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or career?
Okay. Ashutosh, the first milestone, I think, was when my father, who worked in the central government, retired. I was the youngest of four girls, all of 13 years old, and in class 8, with the critical high school years ahead of me. And we had to move from a very fancy and very highly regarded convent school in the upmarket diplomatic enclave of Delhi down to Dharwad in the south, the seat of the iconic Karnataka University. Dharwad, as you know, is known for its classical music giants like Gangubai Hangal, titans in film and theatre, like Girish Karnad. And only thing is, it was also called the pensioner's paradise. So to me, it was a culture shock, a new language to learn, Kannada. You couldn't buy your essentials without it. You couldn't read bus signs or street signs. And I also had to dive into this new school and make new friends. The good part was, looking back, that I had moved from ICSE in Delhi to the state syllabus in Dharwad. So I found it fairly easy actually to top the school. And that gave me a great start in college. And that helped actually financially as well, because I qualified for the National Merit Scholarship. And that was a great boon. We lived on my father's pension at the time, as you can imagine. And looking back, I realized that making so many adjustments at that young age was relatively easy, but it taught me a lifelong lesson of how to cope with upheaval and change. And the importance of immersing yourself in the local culture, the importance of making an effort in reading, writing, and speaking the local language. And later in corporate life, I realized it's pretty much the same lessons that apply in coping with change successfully. The second milestone, which was life-changing, of course, was at age 21, when I married into the family that founded Enercon, which later became Conserve. And I was thankfully sent by my in-laws to do my MBA at IIM Calcutta after I got married. So you can imagine, very few people get that opportunity. And I'm talking about 1984, 85. So although I was among the top 10 in the Karnataka University in my BCom, getting the MBA from a premier institution like IIM was really what set me on an entirely different orbit, Ashutosh. And I think for that opportunity and privilege, I remain very grateful to this day. And the third milestone was at 32, when I became a first-time mom and a first-time CEO, all in the space of a few months.
Wonderful.
Conserve started off as Enercon, and it was set up by my father-in-law, Vasant Rao. And that was set up to make products for measuring electrical energy. I think as we move along, you'll hear a lot more about Conserve, but the stuff that I had to do there and the stuff I went through is really the stuff of my book, Lift Off.
Okay, so we'll talk about
Yeah.
So, finished from IIM Calcutta, you could have easily walked into any top corporate job. You chose to come back to the family business.
Yes.
Stepping into a family business, it has its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
What were some of your challenges as you built your business?
Yeah. Ashutosh, I think the biggest thing that I sort of confronted as I stepped into the family business was being acknowledged as somebody who could contribute. So you really had to prove yourself. And it wasn't easy because I was non-male. There were 3 men in the family who were already in it. And I was non-technical. So my MBA was great. But then what could I actually bring to the table? So proving that point, I think, was the biggest challenge. And there were a whole bunch of other things that I had to go through as I transformed it. So do you want me to talk about it now?
Why not?
Okay. So I think the first step was, of course, when I became the CEO, I found that there's a whole bunch of things that happened before I became the CEO. I want to come back to that. But I took over the business at a time that it was bleeding. It was, the net worth had been wiped out. And we had about 130 employees. We had bank loans to pay. We had a huge wage bill, etc. Fortunately for us, we had been discovered by T. Thomas, who was, India's industry legend. He had just retired from Unilever. He had come back and set up India's first private venture capital fund called Indus. So he had invested through their investments. The VC fund had gone up to 74%, which is not a position that they like to be in normally. And the family had come down from 100%, 26%. So we had a family that was grappling with the loss of ownership and control. So there was this sense of low morale. The first thing I had to do was to change the culture of the business. It was feudal, and I had to send out feudal in the sense, not in a negative kind of way, but it had organically grown to be that way because we had been family owned and managed till that point. And so the signal that I had to send out was, guys, we have new owners now. They have trusted in us, they have faith in us, and they've continuously put in money hoping for some return. It's 4 years, they haven't seen a dividend yet. So now we've got to figure out how we are going to jump up our performance, start making profits, take some really tough decisions, and either you are in with me on this journey or you're out. So, the first step was this feudal culture that I had to change. The second and the most challenging thing was that I had to figure out what was my own leadership voice, what was my leadership style, and how do I find that? So as a first-time leader, I tried to be decisive, and I became almost obsessively interested in listening and learning from the board members and industry leaders that I met when I went to trade shows, etc. And I learned later that I was called an ink blotter. So the most critical step I discovered in this journey was also to learn about the products and go out there and sell them. So we were making, initially we were making electronic voltage stabilizers, but by the time I got in, it was digital meters. And I knew nothing about electrical energy. So I started taking lessons in electrical energy from Ashok. In fact, I remember in our honeymoon, he was teaching me about harmonic distortions and how to quell them. So he bought me this B Electrical book by B.L. Teraja. It's a first-year textbook. It's called a textbook of electrical technology. So I learned all about the parameters, which are meters measured, the interrelationships. I wrestled with understanding the design and the construction of the product. How do they perform? How do they stack up against competition, etc.? But a far bigger challenge, I think, was to convert all this theory into a convincing and effective sales pitch, right? It's great to make products, but you've got to go out there and sell them at a profit. And I had to do this to distributors who had not heard of our company name or our brand name, because when my father-in-law set up the business, he was very clear. I don't want to deal with marketing and sales. I want to concentrate on design and manufacturing. So we had this sole selling agency that used to sell our products, right? So I was greeted with, I can only call it cynicism, derision, and sometimes outright rejection in the marketplace. And that period also taught me the absolute importance of branding, of building a brand, of projecting a brand, of substantiating its promise and delivering on that promise. And the kind of questions that I faced at this time were, but kaun si company hai in Hindi? But which company is this? Never heard about it. By the way, are you an engineer? How come a young girl like you, I was in my late 20s, so it was nice to be called a girl or ladki as they would say. How come a young girl is here to sell? Where are the technical men from the company? So many of the traders from that time who continue to run their businesses today remember me as this little girl who came to convince us to shift from analog meters to digital meters.
Amazing.
And one of these I remember, Ashutosh, was a guy called K.S. Jain, now a real firm family friend. So he witnessed my journey from sales girl to CEO. Years later, in 2005, he was sitting in my spanking new office in Electronic City, and he said to me, it was like a ball of fire was placed in your hands, and you had two options. You could have thrown it because it was burning you, or you could have run with it so fast that the flame went out.
Amazing.
You took the fire and ran.
That's fantastic. So, you built one of the largest energy management companies in the country. We in India seem to be shuttling, between loss of, wasting energy and having surplus energy.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that we face in being able to manage the energy needs of our country?
Okay, so let me answer that in two parts. I think first, let me talk to you about what went into building India's largest energy management company, because I believe there are quite a few lessons to be learned. So the first was we were a prime mover in a whole bunch of things. So it wasn't easy, right? Because you took on all the challenges that the first guy takes on. We sank everything we had into a business in meters when only 1 in 10 sold were digital, 9 were analog, right? And we did this based on a conviction that the demand supply gap in electrical energy, I'm talking about the late 80s, early 90s, we knew that it would only grow. The gap's going to grow because at that time, the local utilities, or the DISCOMs as they're called now, were incentivizing people to sign up for taking on more contract demand or buying more electricity. Why were they doing that? To lock them into a high long-term fixed monthly fee, because they had sunk a lot in transmission and distribution. And it was like, as if, I like to say, as if electrical energy would grow on trees. The second is we built a culture that was fiercely demanding and deeply caring. In fact, I have a whole chapter in my book on Conserve's unique culture. The underpinning of the culture was basically we were a family and we felt we owned the business. This is what Conservians say even today. The third is that we built a product that biggies in the world would want for their customers. So they became OEM buyers. The fourth was being absolutely fearless about transparency. And I really want to stress on this point. We actually, I would do some crazy things, okay? We'd invite customers like MNCs, ABB and Siemens, who were about a quarter of our sales in some regions. I would invite their guys to come and do surprise walkthroughs of our plant. I wouldn't tell anybody in the business. Only I would know that they were arriving. And they would look at our inventory, our QA processes, what were we doing on the shop floor. We could have lost everything if something had gone wrong, right? And I would also ask my ISO auditors, can you please come and do a surprise certifying audit? Because I don't really want you to come when we are all prepared, because it's not going to tell me who we really are. Right. The other thing that we did was we were very ethical, and we used to say, it's better to lose an order or risk the ire of a corrupt official rather than stoop to corruption, right? And we built a brand that attracted finally the attention of somebody like Schneider, to whom we exit. In fact, a distributor once remarked, with everything that you've done, if you put mud in a bag and called it Conserve, people would still buy it. He was being hyperbolic, but I think it kind of showed where we stood.
So from a situation of the little ladki who didn't know what to sell, to being able to put mud in a bag and sell it. What an incredible transition.
Yes, it was quite a journey. And I think finally, Ashutosh, looking at all the IT companies now, I realized that what we actually did at that time was some achievement. At the time, I didn't think it was really big, but we converted a product-focused company into a services-led one with the same sales force. We didn't have the luxury of hiring and training a new sales force. We did that, and that was what actually got us the positioning that attracted Schneider. Now, let me come to the second part of your question. Basically, I just want to leave one thought with you, that at the time that Conserve was, at its peak, we already saw a lot of legislation in this country. In my view, all we need to do is to enact those in state legislatures and act on it. We have the Electricity Act, we have the Energy Conservation Act, lots of laws, but we need, I think, the executive, the legislature and the judiciary to swing into action. And some of the things we're doing are actually fairly retrograde steps, like from net metering, we are going to gross metering to save jobs in DISCOMs, etc. So there's a very few things we need to do, but we need the political will also to do it.
So tell me, built a company that you said was, almost without any money, with 130 employees, so much to do, into India's largest energy management company. And then you decided to sell it. What was it like to sell your baby?
Well, by the time we sold, by the time we exited, it was only partially family owned, and we had a whole professional team in place. But even so, Ashutosh, it felt like I lost a child. Ashok and I both, we had sunk so much into it. And we had, a feeling that we were giving away a priceless jewel. In fact, a couple of distributors' remarks reflected my emotions. One told the head of Schneider at the, going away meeting, she as in Hema, she's giving you a rose. Make sure you don't crush it underfoot. Wow. And another one, and this was the most painful, he said to me when I told him about my intention to exit, he said in Hindi, and it sounded therefore, much more poignant. The translation was, how much are they paying you that you have decided to sell our company? So
Wow.
that's what it felt like.
Amazing. Amazing. So now let's move on, because there's a lot I want to talk to you about. I want to move straight now to your social sector initiatives, which you developed.
Yeah.
One was Conserve My Campus and Conserve My Planet.
Yeah.
Talk to me about these initiatives.
Okay, so Ashutosh, actually the initiative, the two are the same. I called it Conserve My Campus when I started it, and it became, when Schneider took it over, it became Conserve My Planet. So basically, let me tell you how I started it in 2006. I felt that it was time to create something, and this is all pre-CSR days, okay? I wanted to give back, I wanted to educate young children because they are the future consumers of energy. So I wanted to create a free program for middle school children. And the first program of its kind in India. Nowadays, you find a lot of people doing that. But I got this idea from an unusual source. So a friend's daughter had come to spend time with us in a summer holidays. She's a brilliant kid, 7th grade. And as we were stepping out of the door on our way to work, her name was Apurva. She says to Ashok, "Uncle, can you give me something to do when you're out?" So Ashok said, 1 foot over the doorstep, in a hurry, he says, electricity bill seems very high, Apurva. Why don't you check how much we actually use? So he told her the methodology. And when we left, we thought by the time we come back, little Apurva is going to be very bored and she'll probably be reading a book. But when we came, she had totted up what the appliances use, multiplied it by the rate, blah, blah, and waved her notebook in our face and said, "Uncle, your bill is 5% more than it should be."
Wow.
And when we looked at what she had tabulated with no instruction from us, there were only maids at home whom she had spoken to. I said, why can't I teach every kid in school to do an energy audit of their school and of their home and educate their parents and make them want to conserve energy? So that's how it started. It became hugely successful. Even today, Ashutosh, sometimes when I'm giving a webinar in a couple of colleges, I found youngsters who are introducing me saying, "We want to tell you, ma'am, that we started off in life as an energy ambassador," which is what we used to call these kids in school.
Amazing.
And Schneider has taken it all over Asia now, and they call it Conserve My Planet.
Amazing. So, Hema, let me now move to your book.
Okay.
Talk to me about Liftoff. What made you write the book? And what were some of the things you were hoping to achieve with the book?
Okay. Well, it took a very, very long time for me to decide that I should write. And the reason is that when T. Thomas used to keep telling me, "Hema, your story is very unusual. Why don't you write about it?" I would say, "Yeah, I think that's a great idea." And one day at breakfast, I told my son Raghav, who was about 8 or 9 at the time, I said, "Raghav, I'm thinking of writing my own book." And he looked at me and he said, "How pompous. Why would you want to tell your own story?" So for a very long time, his words echoed in my mind. I didn't want to do anything about it. But years after I sold the business, a very good friend of mine, Munira Sen, said, "It's such a pity that you're a Harvard case study. People are studying you at Babson College, at Harvard Business School in the AMP. And you don't talk about it. You're not known in India." So I said, "Munira, I would love to I'd like my story to be told. Who's going to write the book?" She said, "Why don't you ask Ashish Sen, my husband? He's a great writer. Why don't you try it out? Have a conversation." And, that's a whole new chapter in my life, because Ashish loved our story, wanted to go deeper into it, started interviewing people, because I told him, "Ashish, one of the things I don't want is for people to think that I'm blowing my own trumpet. My view is inside out, right? But I need an outside in view." So he interviewed 100 people.
Wow.
90% of them were Conserve employees who were either still with Schneider or outside. And I think that brought the necessary authenticity and different perspectives to the book. The second question was, what did I hope to achieve? My heart's desire is that I'm able to inspire young people and women and entrepreneurs everywhere, particularly in the regional vernacular speaking heartland of India. I want this book to become a college manual or a handbook or a must read textbook, because if you look at the reviews, people are saying, we've actually made chapter wise notes. We are using it as a how to book. So that's what I'm hoping will happen with Liftoff.
Amazing, fantastic, and I'm sure it will. So let me move on and ask you a little bit about gender balance.
Okay.
You're one of the few people I know who very early in life broke the glass ceiling and have led a company from right up front and have done brilliantly well. Yet gender balance is something which is coming into our country very recently.
Right.
Tell me, what can be done to correct the gender imbalance in our country?
Okay, there are lots of stats. I'm not going to waste time on that, but the stats are not encouraging, right? As recently as 2018, we've got figures that show that women have dropped off the workforce. In fact, the more highly educated women from elite institutions are dropping off faster. That's a discussion for another day. But what I would like to share with you, Ashutosh, is that, I was acutely aware of the fact that I had gotten into a CEO role thanks to Ashok and my chairman T. Thomas's support. So I felt I owed it to the other women in my company to go out of the way and do things for them. So I'd like to share some of those stories, hoping it will be lessons for other people. So one of the first things I must tell you is that all our salespeople were male engineers, right? And we used to have a lot of these quarterly social meets where spouses would come for dinners, and I realized that a lot of the men who worked with us, their wives were engineers and sitting at home. So I did a lot of very unusual things to bring these women back into the workforce and to keep them in the workforce. Getting them in there was just the beginning. It took a lot of doing to make sure that all the people in their ecosystem, in their context, supported the decision to work, which sometimes got me the title of control freak, but I didn't care. I had to do it, right? The second thing we ensured was that our compensation was only linked to performance and not to gender. We never had these questions about, do we have gender pay parity? There was no disparity. The third was I created a support group for women. It was across all colors of collars, blue, pink, white, gray, whatever, for all the women. It was called Conservina, and even today it exists in an informal way.
Wow.
Yeah, any one of us can reach out to the other, and because we have that bond, we know we will be there for each other. It's pretty powerful. And the other thing I must tell you is I discovered that men managers, not all of them obviously, some of them would never switch off of work. They would never take leave. Even if they're on leave, they'll answer. In those days we had Blackberries. They would answer their emails instantly, and I'd say, what are you guys doing? Why aren't you spending more time with your family? So one of the things I did was I created a maintenance break in summer and winter. Wow. And I'm hoping that HR heads will read this part of my book very closely, because I shut down the business for 5 days and tagging on a weekend before and after. We had 9 days off in summer and winter. Everybody went on holiday and came back refreshed. And there were many wives who called me and said, thank you for doing that, because my husband realized, for example, anecdotally, a special needs child really needs a lot more support than he or she is getting now. And two of my colleagues actually, after they enjoyed these maintenance breaks, quit and became consultants to us because they realized their families needed them more than we did. Wow. So those are some of the things, and of course, making sure that they're physically safe in going back from work, etc.
That's fantastic. So, Hema, I have time now for 2 questions for you personally.
Okay.
Given the incredible amount of things you've done, very, very successful, sold a business, and yet there is so much more that you continue to do. What does success mean to you?
Okay, well, obviously it's meant different things to me at different points in my life. And as I've evolved in my own internal journey, I think now success means to be in a position where I can do the maximum good for the most people.
Correct. Okay. And a follow-up question to you on that would be that, where did you and where do you continue to draw your inspiration from?
Actually, Ashutosh, today my inspiration is more from the underserved. I work a lot with the underserved in different capacities and different hats, but I realize that there's a lot I can learn from them. Their resilience, their resourcefulness, their self-reliance. And in the past and even today, I think the people I look up to and draw inspiration from are my mentors. First, of course, was H. Vasant Rao, the founder of the business, T. Thomas, and my parents. Unfortunately, none of them are around anymore. Today, Ashok and my life coach, R.R. Nair, who was the head of HR at Unilever, even today are my friends, philosophers and guides.
Wonderful, wonderful. And my last question to you, and I was debating which one to ask you, but I'm going to ask you this one about being a role model to children. So, if you, Hema, were a role model to millions of children who closely followed your life and your life choices, which has been a very successful life, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
Okay. Before I answer that, I must tell you, in Conserve, the most thoughtful ideas and the most brave actions I got from people who are but children, in the very early 20s. So the answer to my question, if I were a role model, what would I do? I would learn to listen to them more and tell less. I think that gets the best results, especially with children of today.
Wonderful. Hema, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you lots of success. Your amazing story of Conserve, and I'm going to be ordering your book, Lift Off, Transforming Conserve, because I think there's a lot to learn. I wish you lots and lots of success. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It was lovely being here.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.